All right, and welcome back. In this session, as part of the Model-Driven Anything series, we've talked about a great deal. We've talked about how the solution architect gets started and builds out the block diagrams for solution architecture, how to extend those elements using UML, tag values, stereotypes, and just collecting as much as intelligence as you can and drawing realization to requirements and any other things that are going on in the project. In this session, we're going to get into the design architects. We sometimes refer to as application architects, could be the solution architects responsible for design and what they do and how they work. So let's get started. We assume the architects are working together, and the design architects, I'm going to call them designers, are extending the solution architecture as they're going forward. So the first step is to extend those elements, and we're going to show exactly how to do this as we go. The second step is to add their own connections as they're moving through the architecture and making decisions from their own perspective. The third step is the designer is going to clean up the model so that he can better use it, reuse it, and collaborate with others as they continue forward. The fourth step is the designer recognizes the real application names. It's not that the solution architect did not use the real asset names, but the designer may give these more technical names. And what we're just showing here is the ability to do that as we're extending the elements using generalization. And then the fifth step is the designer adds initial tag values. From their perspective, the solution architect has already added tag values up to a certain point and will continue to do that, but the designer will continue to add their own tag values to extend design. All right, before we get started, I want to reiterate, if it wasn't clear in the beginning of the video, this is part one of design. And we're going to have multiple parts as we go through and explain how we're going to design the architecture that leads into development of the software. So in this model here, we have this solution approach diagram. It has a couple of legends in here that are communicating the effort and the level of effort. So the application architect or architects would come in and use this and extend these model elements necessary for design. So we know that the solution architect has their own namespace and the design team has their own namespace or package. So we've added a package here called design building blocks. And this is empty right now. Let's add a diagram using the same name, and we're going to add a class diagram. Right? So we have a blank class diagram in here. And the first thing we want to do as we're bringing elements in is have them plain. In other words, not having all of or any elements showing. And you've seen this before in previous videos. We're going to turn off attributes, operations, receptions. What else is checked? Package, contents. Yes, I want to turn that off. And so now anything that we bring in here for reuse will just be a plain block or blocks with the names in them. So we have the solution approach building blocks in here, and we want to reuse the data under these elements for our design building blocks or whatever we're going to name this package. So we're going to right click in here and we're going to find this diagram in the browser. And here are the applications we're going to reuse. So select the first one, hold down the shift key, select the last one, and then go over to the blank diagram. And we're going to drag and drop these into this blank diagram. I'm going to let go of the mouse and I drop as. I am going to choose generalization, not instant objects, and we certainly don't want links because we want our own elements with our own unique global IDs or GUIDs, all right? And we want to do this for all the items we're bringing in. So we're going to check this, click the button, and it's bringing all of these in as generalized elements. Now we've learned what generalization is and what it means. So essentially, if we grab an element here and we look at properties, we can see that it is inheriting everything from that element. So this element has its own global unique ID, and we're on the tag. We're looking at the tagged values that the solution architect added to these elements. And you can see here that in the upper right-hand corner is the name of the superclass. In other words, the class we brought in for this class element, which is generalized, and by default has child appended to the name. So you can see that the class currently doesn't have any tag values, and we go to elements, it has its own properties for its generalized representation. So here are all the elements from the solution namespace. And to prove a point, let's bring in the service exchange right here element and drag and drop it in here. We're going to use link this time. We want to bring in a link or copy of the original element. And you can see this line right here means generalization. So we have all the properties for generalization, and it is blank, and we can populate this with intelligence as we go forward. When we look at this element, it carries all of the intelligence from the original element except for the notes. So here are the notes for the superclass or the original element, and here are the notes for the subclass, completely blank, allowing us to put in anything that we want. And we can see the author right here of this element is the Dan designer, our fictitious application architect, responsible for design, and they will come in and populate their own intelligence as we go forward. And since we have properties up, if we go over to tags, you can see that we've inherited all of the tag values from the superclass, including any tag values for things like requirements, which are realizing the service exchange platform or application in this context view. So I just want to show that. You have other things that are available, but we're focused on the main and tagged or tagged values. All right. So I'm just going to hit OK or cancel. And then we're just going to go ahead and delete the superclass from the diagram. And you can see as soon as we did that, we pick up in italics on the right side here, upper top, the superclass name. So we have a blank element that we can start using and working with. So what I like to do is take properties and just put it to the right of the diagram. I have my notes in the lower right as I move properties here. And let's start organizing these. Now I still have the solution building block model up. And what I will do is I would move this over to another monitor. I have multiple monitors, gives me a much larger workspace so that I can maybe follow the same layout and format. Maybe it's totally up to the designer. They can lay their elements out any way they want. Let's resize this back height and width to the original size and start moving these elements around. So all we're doing in this diagram is just dragging and dropping these items in approximately the space that we want them. Doesn't matter, you can always move them again later on, but we're just going to put them in an order that we want to work in. And you can see it's starting to come out to the same layout as what the solution architect did, and I accidentally dragged it into the wrong window. So now I go to resize it. So I have approximately the same layout as I'm going forward, and I'll continue working. The next thing I'll do is start drawing the connections. So just grab the arrow, drag and drop it where you want it to go, let go. It gives you selection in the menu. We're going to just use all associations right now. Now the designer can get very verbose in drawing their connections between the elements. They can add all sorts of elements that they want to talk about in design that stand alone and have their own intelligence. So we're going to start drawing out the rest of the elements as we proceed. Now I can work at my own pace. So I can do first the connections, and then I can come in and add the intelligence, or I can do one at a time, add all the intelligence, but I like to draw out the connectivity as I'm moving forward. So, and if you draw out an association, and you can see if you double click in it, the source is Service Exchange platform in this case, and the target is cloud data. I can always come in if I want to change the direction, right click on the element, go to advanced, and then reverse direction. So as soon as I do that, now cloud data is the source and the target is Service Exchange, which I feel in this case is relevant. Now direction is still unspecified, and I can come in later on and make it bidirectional, source to destination or destination to source. Let's add source to destination and see what it looks like. Just puts an arrow in it. I don't want that right now. It's still too early. I might add in different lines. I'm taking it back to unspecified, hitting OK. And now I have this association or connector in, I want to say. And then Service Exchange, all I'm doing is just drawing association connectors. So e-commerce is connecting to the service architecture, and the service architecture is either the source for data supply or vice versa. And again, I can put in both arrows or connectors rather in here to represent any conversation in design that I want to have. And then each one of the applications is associated to data supply for event management as we're going through design. Get my connectors in here just to get started. I want them to be orthogonal square. So I'm going to right click in here, line style, orthogonal square. And then I want to apply this right here, apply line style on diagram to connectors of the same type. So now everything is orthogonal square. And this allows me to drag and drop these lines into a way that works for whatever conversation I'm having. So I'll go through and clean this up any way that I want in order to tell my story as we're progressing. So go through here to each one. You can always come in as you're adding lines and clean up how you want that. The plumbing is what we refer to it as, work for you. So whatever works, just go ahead and just draw it in to get started. Certainly still dirty. You could go to layout. Let's see what happens if we go to layout. Let's hit save first. And then we're going to go to layout and diagram layout. We're going to select neaten and see what it does. So it just, you can see it just kind of squares things off. I don't like that there, but I liked what it did. And we're ready to move to the next part. The next thing we're going to do is rename these elements. Right now it has the superclass name underscore child on every one of them. We don't want that. We may come in here and just call this internet or the internet or public access. Give it a name that means something meaningful to the technical design. Because the application architect is essentially talking to technical people, right? As they're going forward. So they may want to come in, I want to call this public access, or I might want to call it in the design model extranet or something else. Give it a meaningful name, and then go through and add meaningful names to each one of these. For example, this could be called out as Azure, which is Microsoft Cloud, load balancers. See if I can spell that right. Load balancers, right? Or Akamai, or whatever the technical reference is to the application. Over in the solution architect, they may just call it load balancer, and you can see that in the superclass name, right? And then we're going to do that all the way through these elements, and they could be almost not human readable. They might be the official name. It may be an alphanumeric reference to the application, but this is blank, right? If I double click this, it has a name, you can add an alias. The alias may be a more user-friendly name, or it could be a fully defined application name in alphanumeric, either one of them. And as you've learned in the channel, you can come in to the diagram properties, use alias if available. And then what it would do, if you were using an alias, it uses the alias for both the superclass. You can see here that load balancers, the alias for this over the solution architecture is performance guaranteed for some reason. All right, that was meaningful to the stakeholders on the solution approach side at the time. All right, so we're going to go back to diagram and turn use alias if available off, and continue to go forward and rename these. Now I can rename these either just double clicking on the element and do it right here in the property window, or I can do it over in properties under name. So this may be referred to as the Arco Cloud Data Platform. Again, anything that is in the asset repository that technical people understand as they're going forward. Now I'm done for now renaming the applications in the design diagram to continue doing work. So the next thing that I will start, and we'll carry forward in the next part of the videos on design as we're going forward, I may come in and go to tag values. Here I have the tag values from the original superclass and the tag values from the initial requirement that's realizing in the solution approach. But for this element, I have no tag values. And we should all know what a tag value is by now. It's extending the elements, even the connectors, for a particular design, solution, problem solving, whatever the objective is. So the first thing that I do is I want to make sure that I add the stage tag value. So now I have a stage tag value. And if we go to settings, and then I go to UML types, and I go to tag value types, we can go down to stage, and we see what the tag value selection is that's been configured for this tag value. And these are all custom tag values. You will have your own as you're going forward. So the default is make a selection, and I would come in and say, well, I'm in solution or I'm in design. And you can see down in the solution, the stage is implemented. So I can either agree on that or disagree on that. And the importance here is that I have this set to the tag value necessary for our design objectives. And I'll go through each one of these and just simply add in the tag values that I want to talk about. All right. And there are multiple tag values I'm going to want to bring in. I'm going to want to bring in effort tag value, and I know it's spelt right and done right as soon as I get the default, make a selection. I haven't done that yet. I might want to come in it right now and start adding in impact as a tag value and other tag values as we're going forward. Now in the channel, you've learned how to switch views. We'll talk about in a second. But if we double click in the diagram when we go to elements, let's say we want to expose the tag values we're bringing in. We're going to turn that on. And now tag values show up for the elements that I've done. I had 3 tag values that are here. And as I'm selecting them, I'm going to move this one into design, the tag values start to show up. All right, so that's totally up to you. Let me show you another fun trick. You've also learned about views. If I right click in the diagram here, switch view, I can go into specification view. And in the specification view, there are no notes. I'm just starting out. I can change what I want to see here. I don't need stereotype. I don't need difficulty. I'm just dragging them out. But I'm going to leave status in there. I'm going to right click up here, add tag value column, right? And here I can select the tag values that are available. And I have a ton of them here. I'm just going to bring in, let's see here. Let's bring in stage first, since that's what we're focused on. So we're going to bring in our custom stage tag value. And now that is available in the specification view. And you can see that I have two that have already been chosen. Now, when you go to something that's configured, you get a drop down and you can make changes in here. So if, for instance, the internet or public access, we named it public access, it's internet. If I select it, I can see that it is internet right here, from internet, which is the superclass name, to public access, what we're calling it in design. I can say, hey, this is implemented, right? I can change it here. And if I come here, when I'm doing tag values, I can't change it. I changed it over here in properties. So I want to move this back to solution, or I want to move it back into, because it's moving into development, I can make those changes here. So as you're adding tag values, you can see we've selected the service exchange, which is called Anypoint. All right, that's the name of the architecture. We can add tag values here. So we're going to add stage, and now we're going to make a selection, and we're going to make a design, and it shows up here. And I can do this using specification view. Another fun tip is, let's just grab e-commerce. All right. And there is no tag value for e-commerce. So we can refresh, reload the view. You can see there's no tag value right now, right? If I come to stage, it says design, and I'm going to put this back to solution. Now, as soon as I make a change in properties, look at that, it added the tag value to the subclass, to this element, right? It's blank right now because we need to reload the model. Let's go ahead and reload the view. And now you can see the tag value in the specification view of this diagram, and we can make any changes that we want. So that's another fun trick and tip as you're going forward. We're going to show later on in the channel how to build automated scripts so that when you right-click something, you can run a script and it will add tag values for you, but that's going to be in a later advanced session. Let's go back to the block diagram here. And then what we're going to do is go to, you see these connectors here? You learned this in the channel. We're going to switch to relation matrix view. And we're going to limit the connected elements. And so now we see all of our associations. So whoever the designer is, they can come in and start putting in intelligence here in properties and do other things they want to do. They want to add tag values, manage everything here with the associations and the elements, right? So they can double click here, bring up properties, or over in the properties window, they can manage the properties here. You can see there's effort and impact, make a selection. We haven't done anything yet. They can manage those properties over here. Same thing goes with the connectors. All right, let's wrap up here. So we've learned a great deal so far. We've taken the solution building block diagram and we've extended it for our design work that we're going to do in this series on model-driven anything. And eventually we're going to start building out the associations and then start building out the software components. So look forward to getting into that with you. All right. Now let's see here. Want to make sure that you're commenting down below, asking questions, because this is going to get into some technical areas. I'm very interested in what problems you're trying to solve in delivering your systems and software, and what tooling that you would like to have that makes it more productive to do that. So until the next episode, thanks for watching. Happy modeling.